because of the emotional pain that I was experiencing, the confusion that I was in, the duress that I was in, I was like, yo, red pill don't sound too bad. Like, I kind of get it. As uniquely orchestrated as lyrics can be, that speak to very vulnerable and softened wounds, it only makes it relatable to the pain. It doesn't actually heal the pain. A lot of the beginning stages to us even approaching a crucial shift and a pivot in our lives come from us being wounded emotionally in some state. You're using that motivation to prove you don't need them. And the crazy thing about it is that still falls under the platform of people pleasing. Is that real healing doesn't come from clinging to the familiar. It comes from approaching what's foreign. What's foreign is being grounded in your emotions, being honest about what hurts, allowing waves of emotions to hit, digesting truth. All those things are foreign. But what's familiar is sexing it out, partying it out, eating it out. We spend so much of our life trying to avoid pain that we never really see pain through the lens of purpose. We only see pain as something that's a deficit to us, not something that is a means to add something to us. This might be hard to hear, but I just need you to understand it. I need you to take a deep breath. Are you ready? I need you to listen, because this can be difficult. Yo, family, what's happening? Welcome back to another episode and another weekly podcast as we are diving into the conversation of the crucial shift. I'm so glad you're here. Hopefully you guys caught the cinematic video to this, because it just lays the groundwork of a lot of what men are experiencing in today's culture when it comes to relationships. And even though that one speaks specifically to dating, I mean, there's a lot of experiences similar to that in other relationships that men are facing, man. It comes down to being in those positions of heartbreak, loss, and rejection, that after being everything that you thought you needed to be in order to land the right outcome for the right girl, for the right person, they still didn't want you. You find yourself at a crossroads where you're like, bro, it's probably not even worth being the nice guy no more. Like, we can just kind of dead that and throw that in the trash, because it doesn't mean anything. And what's crazy is I actually had my moment of moving exactly like that. It was in the recent rejection that I experienced back in 2023. And it was twice where it happened, at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. I stayed around. I wanted to see what it would become. I really was buying into a lot of narratives that I created and wasn't really based off of what was shown in reality through behaviors. And there were a lot of things that I missed throughout the course of the connection, basically trying to make it to be what I wanted it to be. But the first rejection, when it took place in the beginning of 2023, I was hurt. Your boy was shocked. Your boy was really, really down bad and wavered through the 5 stages of grief. And I definitely had a moment where, because of the emotional pain that I was experiencing, the confusion that I was in, the duress that I was in, I was like, yo, red pill don't sound too bad. Like, I kind of get it. Like, that was kind of my first response to it. Like, I get why men move like this. Like, I get why men feel just this overwhelming need to step into a space where they're ready to throw away all of the things that made them the nice guy, the good guy, all that kind of stuff, and just turn the corner and go ballistic on everything else. And it's like, I had a moment where I was like, I can see how that makes sense. And, you know, I think in the moment of me experiencing that rejection, one of the things that I did that I remember so vividly was run into a playlist. Everybody's got that playlist that they rock with, right? That those group of songs, selected songs, or even artists that when you're going through a tough time emotionally, this is where you're at. For me, I ain't even gonna lie to you, it was Drake, okay, Drizzy. Specifically, in this area, it was a lot of Feel No Ways. If y'all remember that Views album, that one right there, yeah, that was it. You also had Jaded, some of the other older mixes that Drake had, but those two, man, wow, you talk about a song that had me not just in my feelings, but deeper in my feelings. And like, I'm talking, room was dark. I'm playing the game, but I'm not really locked in, and I'm just singing the lyrics. Like, it's one of those moments. And it was something that was to be, in a way, a symbolic gesture of everything that I was experiencing, because lyrics do that, right? If it wasn't Drake, it was Rod Wave, right? Heart been broke so many times you don't know what to believe, right? Mama said it's my fault. It's my fault. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like, we know the lyrics. We know the lyrics. Um, there's so many Keisha Cole songs. Next time, I won't throw my heart away again. Like, we just we got songs, heartbreak songs for days. What is that song by? I'm forgetting the artist's name, but Long as I Live, Tony Braxton. Long as I live. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have all these songs that we can run to give ourselves that space to be related to, and to have somebody just speaking to the emotions that we're walking through. But here's the craziest thing that I've learned, not just from that moment that even I experienced, but just witnessing so many other people go through things similarly, is as uniquely orchestrated as lyrics can be, that speak to very vulnerable and softened wounds, it only makes it relatable to the pain. It doesn't actually heal the pain. And I had that moment when I was in the midst of just riding the waves of the emotions I was experiencing from the first time I got rejected. Now, it's crazy because I always refer to this one, but it's not the only one that I've experienced. But I think I refer to this one often in conversations of rejection because it was the most impactful. It was the most impactful. It was the most that I learned from. It was the most that I gained from. It was the most that pushed me to a place of greater transformation and maturity as a man. Okay. And it was one of those ones where I really was able to see what I was really about, because even though I had been rejected before, ghosted before, I had lost friendships and relationships prior to, this was the first time that I actually put myself in position to be like, yeah, bro, like, I'm actually pursuing somebody. Like, I'm actually wanting to create a long-term relationship. And it's deeper than just titles. It's deeper than just having somebody I can post on the social media waves. It's deeper. It's just deeper. Like, so this was my approach. And when I actually stepped out and did all those things, I was feeling the brunt of it, right? And so I refer to this one a lot because it was the most transformational, but most impactful, most fruitful, most beneficial, and I have so much gratitude for. But I got to be honest, when I was in that pit, man, it was rough. Dark clouds. Each day was a struggle. There was a sharp ache, pain in my heart that I could not let go of. It was a lingering gut punch. It felt like as every day passed by, I was being forgotten. It felt like every day was just a day where my mind was going crazy. And if I wasn't focused on something that was keeping me occupied and away from it, my mind would go right back to it, questioning my value. Was I enough? What did I do wrong? Where could I have gone better? And we just easily bounce from those places. Anger, denial, depression, bargaining, acceptance. Like, never really got to acceptance early on, but it was definitely those first four that was a struggle. And so when I was listening to Drake Feel No Ways, it was a night where I was doing that, and I could literally feel myself, just my thinking process. I could see myself shifting into this perspective where I was like, yeah, bro, that's it for me. Like, I'm not going back. I'm not doing it no more. I'm not showing up as that guy no more. Like, nice, who cares? A man with character and morals, clearly they don't care, so why do it, right? And it led me to feeling like that. And I remember pressing pause on about maybe one of the third time it looped, possibly. I hit that pause button. I was like, yeah, bro, I got to turn this off because this is just bringing me down even further. Like, me being able to actually move forward like I say I want to is getting more and more difficult the more and more I listen to this song. The more and more I'm listening to music that is speaking directly to maybe how I'm feeling emotionally, but that's all it's doing. And I think that's a lot of us. We can all experience that. And so the question then becomes, for me, after that, I was like, well, what do I listen to? What am I listening to? What am I giving my heart to? And I think that really positions us into perhaps the shift that is described for this conversation, because all of us can relate in some way, shape, or form to the heartbreak and emotional wound that we experienced that placed us in a position where we were found in the middle. I'm coming from somewhere and I'm going someplace else. And it's in that middle that's a journey. It's in that middle that's a struggle. It's in that middle that's filled with tension, pain, heartbreak, just emotional wear and tear. And it's navigating that's the toughest part. Because, like, my heart is screaming, I really want to listen to all the heartbreak music that I got on my playlist, because it just it just puts me in my feels. It just lets me feel it. It just lets me be present in it. Like, all the music and lyrics just is creating a narrative in my mind about the person that I just lost a relationship with. And the lyrics are just so accurate to what I'm feeling, man. It's just like, bro, that ninja speaking to my soul, right? Like, that's the type of language we move with. And there's this part of us that, even though we want to move forward because the pain hurts so bad, we find room to linger because, well, it's the music, it's the genre, it's what we're listening to that's giving us permission to kind of stay where we are. And so emotional pain will lead us to doing that. Emotional pain will lead us into positions, into places where we will begin to just rehearse all the things in regards to the relationship, in regards to how we felt about the relationship, how it ended. I mean, it will just stay there. And what we have to do is recognize, man, that what we're listening to has a huge role in how we navigate such a shift. Because truth is, what you listen to is what's informing you, not just on how you feel, but is going to inform you on how you should move about how you feel in future spaces and areas. And so when experiencing emotional pain and distress, we easily lean into what we feel more than what we know. There is a saying that says, facts don't care about your feelings. And as true as that is, it's also true that in very, very vulnerable moments, your feelings don't care too much about the facts either. Right? Like, this is why we can actually look at situations like being cheated on. We can look at situations like experiencing a separation, a divorce, a breakup, experiencing the loss of a friendship, experiencing a moment where you blew up and there was an argument happening. And as a result of the argument, the relationship is no longer. Everybody just called it quits. And we can understand that in those very moments, you'll be thinking to yourself, yeah, man, like, I wish I didn't do this, or I wish I do that. Or somebody would tell you, hey, man, like, if you would have just dropped it, if you would have just listened, if you would have just actually heard all the facts, and they just start giving you all these facts, and you're like, bro, I could care less about that. I could care less about that. Stop showing me all these statistics. Stop showing me all these numbers. Stop showing me all these facts. I don't care. Like, this is how I feel, and this is how I want to move with how I feel. And emotional pain leads us to that. Our emotions literally have the capacity to fog our thinking and place us in positions where we are now being led by our heart, led by our emotions, and no longer caring what's right or wrong, or really inserting logic and reasoning into what we're experiencing. Okay. And so our hearts are saying one thing, our minds are often saying something else. And this is often the conflict that we're feeling as it pertains to the shift. Because when experiencing an emotional wound of any kind, our brain is feeding this information and has the tendency to communicate to us what to expect moving forward from such an experience. So again, going back to the rejection, it's very possible that I know for me, at least like when I first experienced a legitimate rejection and being ghosted by somebody that I was interested in when I was coming out of high school, that one was interesting because that one easily tried to create a different framework of mind where, okay, well, I'm not even going to open up like that no more. I'm good. Try to bury the wound, try to bury the emotions. And then because this was the result, there was a potential framework created where now I'm convinced that this is what's going to be. This is how all my other relationships are going to pan out. I'm going to open up, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be loving, and then they're just going to shut the door or walk away. Right? And so our neurological system is dysregulated, and part of what adds to that is the cognitive dissonance we battle with when disappointed because what the experience communicated doesn't match how we see ourselves up to this point. Okay? So being rejected, the experience didn't go well. The event of the rejection is saying this person doesn't find you as interesting or somebody they just want to take to that next step. What we could easily hear in that, due to the crushing weight of the wound that was just created by being rejected, is I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I don't have enough value. And we make the rejection about us to the extent that we then begin to question who we are or feel awful about who we are as it relates to the wound of being rejected. And a lot of this happens in so many different ways. If you ever notice when you experience a disappointment, or maybe you are the cause of the potential disappointment, like something didn't really go as planned, like you may have intended. Maybe you made a decision that was a mistake and it didn't really help the situation. You can easily start stepping into the negative self-talk where you start claiming that you're an idiot, you're dumb, you're the worst. I never get this right. I'm an awful person. I'm never valuable. I just don't do anything right. I know I've had those kind of moments when I was growing up, being smaller and being a kid. But this stuff even travels into our adulthood. Like I remember having a conversation with somebody on my campus who I believe was a freshman at the time. And one of the things that I just could not get for the life of me was how negative he was. It was like no matter the kind of statement that I could make to help reframe some of his perspectives on relationships, being single, why he felt it was such a struggle to date, why he felt it was such a struggle to find somebody to romantically connect with. It was just like one thing after another. He just continuously regurgitated the idea that he wasn't enough. He kept regurgitating the idea that he just was not compatible with anybody. He kept saying he was ugly. He kept saying a lot of these negative self-identifying things over him. And I remember at one point or another just getting frustrated, not even necessarily expressing that frustration to him, but just acknowledging that, like, yo, this is so bad. Like, I don't know if I have the capacity to be around somebody who is as negative as this. But as I've grown and matured and I've continued to deal with people who may have come from these backgrounds and struggles, what I've learned is that when it comes to reframing the way we think, oftentimes we have to go back to the beginning and the beginning roots of what even gave us permission to feel the way we did about ourselves in the first place. And that was huge because going back to the beginning helped us identify what was that very moment where this experience that we had, we felt was saying something about who we are. And so now we get closer to growing into a place through cognitive reframing where we begin integrating our negative experiences into our realities and no longer allowing who we are to be meshed with the specific experience that happened to us that was a negative reaction or outcome. And it was one of those things that when I learned that, it blew my mind, because now I was like, okay, now we've got a place to start. Now it's not just me trying to share with you these cliche statements, these encouraging messages out of the women out of the blue and just expecting you to get it. No, it's like now we have a beginning place where we can actually peel some stuff back to see where stuff began. Because without seeing the beginning, we don't really have intentionality with next steps, and we really don't know where to go from there. We just kind of end up at a standstill. I'm saying one thing, you're saying another, you don't get it, and it's easy for me to just drop it all and walk away instead of just growing curious and asking questions as to where all of that began. And so going back to the emotional wound and what our brain is communicating, that's exactly what happens. When we experience something for the first time that doesn't really match who we are, it's a conflict, because we begin to perceive that now this event that doesn't match who we are, well, we must be off somewhere. And so then we lean more into believing that what the event was is a direct reflection of who we are or who we are not. And so therefore I'm not enough. As opposed to being like, okay, even though this was the event, I want to also be mindful of the source. I want to be mindful of the individual that rejected me. I want to be mindful of the credibility I'm giving to this individual. I want to be mindful of the value that I already know I have, and being grounded in those places to where even though this is the event, this is not who I am. I'm able to separate the two and not mesh or conflate the two. And so when our brains are doing that and we're at war between our emotions and our thinking, our reasoning and our feelings, okay, there's a lot that's fighting for our attention, right? There's a lot that's fighting for our attention. When our minds are combative with our emotions or with our feelings, there's a lot that we're initially trying to branch off to in order to get some relief. That's why we find ourselves in a lot of conflicting inner warfare that we're experiencing. A lot of anxiety, a lot of unrest, inability to relax. We go into these states of overthinking. We go into these states of fight or flight. Fight or flight is very real because obviously those hold spaces for traumatic experiences, emotional wounds that are created. But we are just very anxious and aggressive in everything. We're hypersensitive. And the hypersensitivity is due to the very initial experience we had that informed us and informed our bodies based on that experience that we need to do something different so this doesn't happen again. And so that emotional wound is stored in our body. And because we don't really necessarily attend to our body and well-being, and we just keep going and we keep pushing through as men, we keep burying it, we keep overworking through it. Maybe we keep sexing it out. We keep partying it out. We keep drinking it out. We never really address it. And so our body stores that information and we're never really able to surpass it. And I think as we're really setting the stage of addressing this crucial shift, I really hope that the first thing that I really want you to just grasp is that a lot of the beginning stages to us even approaching a crucial shift and a pivot in our lives come from us being wounded emotionally in some state. It comes from us actually being hurt by somebody that we expected a lot more from, that we were hoping a lot more would come out of. And because we experienced such a massive disappointment, because what we deemed to be a safe place seems to no longer be a place of safety due to the response, the outcome, how we were treated. Now we are in a place where we're frantic, we're scattering, and we're in a position where we're trying to cling to anything that would hopefully soothe what we're feeling. Because if there's one thing that many people that I have coached and counseled up to this point have told me, and that I've learned, is that it's a whole different ball game to be connected to your body and allow yourself to grieve something for the first time and feeling all the pains, because you're used to allowing your heart and your emotions to take you all these different directions as a response of dealing with the symptoms. Bro, I'm having such a huge heartache. I can't get her off my mind. My stomach is just in knots. I can't sleep. I want to be able to get this off of my mind. I want to be able to get her out of my heart. So I want to do this by sexing it out, because that's a whole lot better of a feeling pleasurably than it is just continuously dwelling on something that isn't going to change, like the breakup. Maybe it's not sex. Maybe it's partying, because, hey, I get to turn up. I get to have fun. I get to get sloppy drunk. I get to give myself an excuse to get high, all those kinds of things. And boom, right? Before I know it, I'm waking up in somebody's backyard in the AM. I don't even know where I'm at. Right. Then there's not just the partying or the sexing. Of course, we run to those. There's also those moments where we just would rather live our lives vicariously through reality TV shows that we binge watch. We binge watch Netflix shows. We binge game. We sit on there and we on the sticks all day, every day. Right. That's all in a way of us trying to escape something that is so difficult for us to address in real time. And because we've given ourselves to so many different avenues of doing that, maybe it's even the gym too, right? Because the gym is a healthy outlet, keeps us in shape, but yet because of the pain that we experienced emotionally, we will go to the gym as a means of letting go of that aggression, letting go of that anger, letting go of that frustration. But it's crazy because, like, when you go back to bed that night, it's still there. So I got to go back to the gym and do the same thing the next day. And I got to use my pain as a motivation to prove that I don't need them. I got to use that drive to go to the gym and get the gains and get swole to prove that I'm better off without them. Like, we've all seen those transformation pictures where a guy goes from like scrawny, skinny to like super swole. And the first question you'll see in the comment section is, well, bro, who broke his heart? Because it's so natural, especially nowadays, to see somebody go through those transformations and automatically assume that they went through a devastating breakup and separation. And even though that is possible, there's a lot of stories where guys have done that. There also are just as many stories where guys did that and still didn't heal from that relationship, still didn't heal from that breakup, still didn't heal from that wound. And not only did they not heal, but they just became bigger and swoller in their physique and not stronger in their spiritual foundation, not stronger in their emotional intelligence and awareness, and not stronger in a place where they were able to take accountability for any of the efforts that they created in that relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, in order to create something different for their lives moving forward. And so you're using that motivation to prove you don't need them. And the crazy thing about it is that still falls under the platform of people pleasing. Like, you've convinced yourself you don't need them. You did it through dating other women. You did it through the gym. You did it through getting money and getting your status up. But the reasoning and the root behind why you did it wasn't because it was something you said was the right thing to do. It wasn't because you thought to yourself that this was something that was healthy and creating a healthy lifestyle. You said it was because this will prove them. This will show them I don't need them. This will show them I don't want them. This will show them I'm better than them. And we used it as a chip, but it wasn't beneficial. And so hopefully, as we're just journeying through this conversation, because we're about to land on some scriptures to kind of bring all this together, emotional wounds is often what brings us to this shift that we need to make. And oftentimes it is a struggle between what we think and what we feel, the reasoning and the emotion that's at constant battle within us, that's causing us to become more frantic, unstable, and very, very passionate, very aggressive in a lot of the decisions that we're willing to just automatically make as a result of being emotionally wounded by somebody we trusted, we found safety in, we cared for, we valued, and yet the outcome doesn't come in the way we wanted it, and it was the last thing we actually could have wished for. So, in light of asking the question, what are we listening to? And in light of understanding that, you know, when we address these emotional wounds and chemicals being released in the brain from all these things, fight or flight, all that, right? There's a lot that's fighting for our attention. And our immediate response is to cling to what's familiar, what's soothing, or what's easiest, right? A lot of the stuff that we just talked about in this previous block. But here's what I want you to get is that real healing doesn't come from clinging to the familiar. It comes from approaching what's foreign. Hence, like a lot of the other people that we just briefly described that I've experienced in this coaching space, right? What's foreign is being grounded in your emotions, being honest about what hurts, allowing waves of emotions to hit, digesting truth. All those things are foreign. But what's familiar is sexing it out, partying it out, eating it out. You're going out and you're eating everything. You're allowing yourself to just eat your feelings away. You binge game, you binge watch Netflix. Man, how many stories do we know of guys using their heartbreak as motivation to dive back into pornography, right? It's a chemical imbalance that's taking place. Your nervous system is imbalanced. It's shocked. You got hit with something that you were not expecting. And so now we're about to see, okay, when you're rattled, how do you respond? And oftentimes when any of us are rattled, it's easier for us to lean into what's more comfortable, and it's a lot more difficult to lean into what's harder. But what's crazy is the healing that we think the porn is going to bring us, the healing we think overworking and bringing more money is going to bring us, the healing we think getting another relationship to get over the past relationship is going to bring us actually isn't where the healing is. It's actually in doing the hard things and approaching and growing comfortable with what's uncomfortable and what's foreign. And so I want you to go ahead and just brace yourself in the midst of this conversation, because there are going to be some hard truths and some realizations that you're going to have to digest if we're really going to actually move forward in the healing process effectively and not just give ourselves permission as men to crash out and to do things that are not beneficial to who we are wanting to become. Okay. I'll start out with this quote. C.S. Lewis says this: God often whispers to us God often shouts to us in our pain, whispers to us in our pleasures, right? It's when we're experiencing a pleasurable thing that we least, right, hear God. And that's not to say that everything that we enjoy means God isn't in it. Of course, there's specific context that we have to consider. But what I am suggesting is that when we're enjoying something and we are finding pleasure in it, it's not too often that we're actually maybe considering or listening or leaning into what God may quietly be communicating to us. So it does take a greater level of intentionality and awareness, even at a spiritual level and spiritual foundation, in order to not allow what we find pleasure in to go overboard in it. That causes us to completely disregard what God may be speaking to us or just being connected to him in general. But then when we talk about the pains, y'all, he shouts to us in our pain. When he shouts to us in our pain, it's actually pain that ends up bringing us to the feet of God. Pain is often the medicine that we receive that is indicating to us, based on our response to it, what we actually believe, where we're actually going to go, what we're actually going to do. We spend so much of our life trying to avoid pain that we never really see pain through the lens of purpose. We only see pain as something that's a deficit to us, not something that is a means to add something to us. And it's not to say that we wake up every day excited to embrace pain. Pain is uncomfortable. Pain is not a smooth sailing thing to endure or to go through. But I think it's our perspective on pain that C.S. Lewis introduces, that I think scripture gives to us, that helps us be more willing to embrace it, to navigate it, and more importantly, to lean on God for the endurance through it, because every pain that we encounter carries some level of purpose that God can use for our lives moving forward. And so this sets the stage for the first scripture that we're going to use. Because as I mentioned before, in the most emotional, vulnerable, unstable positions that we're experiencing as it relates to experiencing a heartbreak, a breakup, being blindsided, being treated like trash, thrown away, nice guy, finished last, didn't get across the finish line, didn't get the girl, but I did everything right. And I'm ready to throw all of my character and all of my integrity out the window. And I'm ready to just do away with everything so I can actually get what I want and just start being the bad boy and all these other kinds of things, right? All these different thoughts that we're having in our minds. There's so much that's fighting for our attention in the midst of this chemical imbalance and nervous system dysregulation that we're experiencing. And so the first thing that I want you to get is that we have to be aware that there's so much fighting for our attention. And this actually starts in Proverbs chapter 9. And if you check out Proverbs chapter 9, this is a beautiful passage of text because Solomon gives us a picture of wisdom and foolishness calling out to the same crowd. And you'll see the postures of both wisdom and what some scriptures will refer to as folly, just another word for foolishness. And they're both making a call out, speaking, engaging, and making themselves known in some particular way to the people that are in their vicinity. But I want you to check out the messaging that is important to catch here. All right, and I'm going to just start at verse 1. And I'm going to read a couple verses in that, and then I'm going to go to the falling part in the second half of it. So 9 verse 1, wisdom has built her house. She has carved its 7 columns. She has prepared a great banquet, mixed the wines and set the table. She has sent her servants to invite everyone to come. She calls out from the heights overlooking the city, come in with me, she urges the simple being the foolish. To those who lack good judgment, she says, come, eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways behind and begin to live. Learn to use good judgment. That's beautiful. Leave your simple ways, so leave foolishness behind and begin to live. Learn to use good judgment. Anyone who rebukes a mocker will get an insult in return. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you, but correct the wise and they will love you. Instruct the wise and they will be even wiser. Teach the righteous and they will learn even more. But here's the foundation. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment. And so there's a comely presence with wisdom, a comely tone, an inviting tone, nothing forceful, nothing that is what would you say? That is sugarcoating, coddling, right? This is a call out, and those who would receive such are able to do a lot more digging in, pressing in, and self-reflection to admit that, dang, this invitation is actually something I need. I got to be honest with where I'm at. I got to be honest with what I'm doing. I got to be honest about the foolishness that I may be living. And I have to be willing to leave that behind in order to embrace the life that wisdom is offering. But listen to how folly and foolishness introduces this into the text. Verse 13, the woman named Folly is brash. She is ignorant and doesn't know it. She sits in her doorway on the heights overlooking the city. She calls out, both of them called out, to men going by who are minding their own business. Come in with me, she urges the simple. To those who lack good judgment, she says, stolen water is refreshing. Food eaten in secret tastes the best. But little do they know that the dead are there. Her guests are in the depths of the grave. And so even though Folly seems to have a little bit of a smaller window, it still says a lot. So she doesn't know what she doesn't know. She's sitting in the doorway on the heights overlooking the city and calling out to men going by who are minding their own business. Okay. And she's very brash. She's very loud. And this is what's being urged. To those who lack good judgment, stolen water is refreshing. So what do we mean when it says stolen water is refreshing? Well, I've actually thought about this, and I think one place that I've come to is that anything that is stolen is something that the flesh wants. Anything that is stolen is something that the flesh wants that the spirit is not giving permission to. And how do we know what the spirit is giving permission to? Well, one, we got to know his word. And two, we have to understand the fruit of the spirit and then question what is being provided to us, asking, is this even a resemblance of us reflecting the fruit of the spirit? Is this something that actually could lead me to cultivating more of the fruit of the spirit? Or is this something that is actually just the complete opposite? Right? So folly is inviting us into a space and a trap where you're thriving off of something your flesh really wants. Wisdom is inviting us into a space that is actually calling us to leave our flesh behind and thrive off of the health and wealth that the spirit is wanting to offer. The health and wealth being the fruit of the spirit, the health and wealth being the healing, the health and wealth being the ability to live and the ability to discern. To make good judgment is just simply discernment. Hey, I can see where this is going, or hey, I'm actually getting curious of all the information that I'm gathering, the facts that I'm seeing, and I want to make a healthy decision about it. So what I want you to kind of understand from Proverbs 9 is that wisdom and foolishness is literally calling for your attention in different manners and in different ways. And it's all happening every day at the click of a button and a scroll of a social media page. I mean, so many people are in your ear every day, telling you what you should and shouldn't do, telling you how you should and shouldn't act, telling you how you should and shouldn't treat a girl and treat a man, telling you what men and women want and don't want, telling you that it's all the women's fault, and the other side telling you it's all men's fault. Manosphere, red pill versus sprinkle versus 50-50. So many people are just in your ear every day, every day, 24/7. Every time we open up these phones and we get into the socials, there are people telling us how to live, what to do, what to say, how to think, so on and so forth. And so with so much fighting your attention, not only is it important to be aware that there's so much grabbing for your attention, but it's just as important to be aware of the fruit that you are producing in your life from what you're already paying attention to. Because here's the truth. What you pay attention to is ultimately who you will become. What you give your attention to is ultimately who you will become. Okay, if you give your attention to all this manosphere, red pill stuff that is telling you just get your status up, get your money up, start getting multiple women. Women don't want men without experience, this, that, and the third. You're eventually going to become just like those men. And even though it looks like they're winning on the outside, if you guys have learned nothing from a lot of the stuff that Andrew Tate has been exposed about and so many others, it's that there's a life that is so easily betrayed online as a form of success that is actually a trap, because the life that's lived behind the scenes is not one that is congruent. It's filled with cognitive dissonance. And it's so interesting because red pill has a way of presenting to you all the feelings that you're experiencing, just a little bit of truth, right? Just a little bit of truth of how people respond, how people act, and the betrayals and the breakups and how women have treated men in the past and all these different kinds of, just a little truth. But then once you take that, it's just like the folly. It's just like the foolish woman in Proverbs 9. You take a little bit that's presented and it looks good, but as soon as you step into those doors, you're trapped. You're eating and feasting on garbage, on hellish principles, on hellish things that aren't of Christ, that aren't beneficial, that aren't actually helpful to your healing. And so even though we can all make those connections and say, yo, I mean, yeah, they're saying some things, they're saying some right things. I'm not saying that everything that the red pill community produces is just straight up evil. I think there are some fair conversations that are worth having. However, this is what they do. They present that in front of you as a means of trying to lure you into receiving so much more toxicity that isn't beneficial to the man you actually want to become, that isn't helpful to you producing the right relationships you genuinely want, to actually help you get what you're actually looking for. And that's relief and transformation, healing and comfort. Like it's interesting, man, because we all can fit into a group that relate to us. But if relatability is all that they do, then there's no actual healing in this. We see this in scripture. We remember the 10 lepers that Jesus healed. Well, it's interesting because leprosy was something that wasn't even supposed to be available for people to remain in community. If you had leprosy, you had to remain in a place of isolation. And yet there's 10 lepers who are walking around, who have formed a community together. And the number one connection to the community that they created is the very fact that they share the same disease. They share the same struggle. They share the same issue. But realize how none of them, even in sharing and identifying in and with one another with the disease that they carry, none of them could heal each other. They still had to go to the healer in order to get what they needed. They still had to come to the feet of Jesus. My entire point to all of this is that we cannot just allow what we connect with due to our pains. We cannot allow what we find common ground in with our emotional wounds to be what leads us into traps and into places of impairment. It's not just your heart that's broken. Your soul is hurting. And your soul needs therapy. Not your pockets, not your status, not your ego. Your soul needs therapy. And your soul can't get the therapy it needs if we're constantly feeding it a lot of wrong attention, wrong focus, and wrong foolish things in the end. And so I want you to just be mindful as we're in this crucial shift, as we're in this middle, as we're in this space where we're going from one place and going to another. And there's a lot of emotional, crazy chaos happening where we feel imbalanced. I just want you to be mindful. What am I giving my attention to? Like, what am I listening to? What am I giving my eyes to? And then when I actually look at the fruit, is this beneficial? Is this actually helping me becoming more of the man I said I wanted to be, a man of integrity, a man of character, a man of value, a man of honor, a man of love, right? Because we can't lean into these extremes as a measurement of dealing with the struggles and breakups we've encountered. We can't do it. It's not helpful to lean in such a space of extremes that we ignore all the other nuances that are important to who we're trying to become. It's not healthy. It's very toxic. And it's not even something that Jesus prescribes to us when it comes to dealing with pains, hurts, and navigating through such seasons. Like, leaning in those extremes just don't help anybody. And I think one way we can avoid that is when we're actually aware enough to know what we're giving ourselves attention to. So check your social feeds, refresh those, acknowledge who you're following, acknowledge the content that they're putting out, and genuinely ask yourself, does this kind of content reflect the person that I actually want to be in truth? Because ultimately what you give your attention to is who you'll become. And I think we got to give our attention to wisdom. We got to give our attention to wisdom, because it's in wisdom that we're actually going to get what we need. Okay. So not only do we need to pay attention to, what we're listening to and who is speaking the loudest in our ears, who's speaking the loudest on our social feeds, right? Everybody's grasping for our attention, and in vulnerable states, it's easy for us to lean into what's more comfortable, what requires less work, requires less, inner self-reflection to actually address the hard truths and make different decisions because it's the right thing to do, right? It's so much easier to just blame everybody, project everybody, and move to the other side. Be mindful of who has your attention. But then secondly, what's so interesting in all of this conversation is that we have to be honest about our grief. Like, in the midst of experiencing this crucial shift, we have to be honest that what we're experiencing sucks, that what we're going through is not feel good, and be honest about where we are in that process. So many men I've encountered don't really know how to grieve. And I think that's going to be a future conversation. But I think a lot of us are so used to just moving and moving and moving. We don't know what it looks like to actually grieve, to actually feel our emotions, and to actually be honest and say, yo, I don't feel good today. Because we've put on this message that's been constantly repeated to us from either people before us, social media, that men are weak if they express their emotions. Men are pressured to express their emotions. And the moment they do, it's betrayed. And now I feel like I can't do it anymore. And we use all of these different bravados and extremes and specific situations, a one size fits all, as if this is what a man is supposed to be. I'm just supposed to go to work. I'm supposed to pay the bills. I'm supposed to do all these kinds of things. So many expectations. And yet we are not giving ourselves the opportunity to actually heal. We don't care enough about who we are and who we're trying to be in order to slow down and acknowledge that there's some healing that we need to do. And part of actually healing these broken areas is just being honest. And I like to take us to 1 Samuel 16. I've read this before. We've talked about this before on this channel. It's becoming one of those staple verses, especially when we talk about rejection, because it's just what it flat out says in the text. But I want you to check out 1 Kings chapter 16. And this, I'm sorry, not 1 Kings, 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 16. I think I said that at first. And this is Samuel here. And so this is what it says. Now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel. So fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king. But Samuel asked, how can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. Take a heifer with you, the Lord replied, and say you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me. So Samuel did as the Lord instructed. And we'll pause right there. So this is beautiful. We've talked about this quite a few times. But what's so mind-boggling to me about this text that I think implicitly speaks to us the importance of being able to be honest about our grief is that if we're being honest, sometimes we are mourning over people who don't exist. We're mourning over people that, if we're being honest, we never really even had full access to in order to actually do life with completely. And I know that you had a long relationship with them, so it might be hard for you to digest what I just said, but I really want you to just walk with me for a second, because I think grief can be a tricky thing when we're journeying through it because of all the emotions, the wave of emotions that we're experiencing, and just learning for the first time how to be present in them. And you know, we talk a lot about the 5 stages of grief: anger, bargaining, depression, denial, acceptance, not in that order. But one of the ones that is the most trickiest is bargaining. Bargaining is actually one of those ones that we find ourselves in the longest, but we don't even realize it. And I think part of why we don't realize it is because we've tried to find ways to justify the why we're searching for. We're trying to rationalize, and we have a conversation on that. Please go check it out. I think it'll be very beneficial for you. We really try to rationalize the why, or the answer behind why we weren't wanted, why somebody did not stay with us, why somebody wasn't fully available to us, why the relationship didn't work out the way that we hoped for, right? And we've all been there. I know I did it. In my own rejection that I opened up and talked about, I mean, there's so many layers to it. I had a period of time where I was literally trying to figure out why this didn't happen the way I thought. I was like, I have never in my life been in a situation where all the right things ended up in the wrong result. Not to this glaring conclusion. And so it rattled me, and I was really trying to figure it out. I mean, to the point where I was writing out timestamps and dates of messages and trying to figure out where tones shifted. Where did it go wrong? What could I have said? What could I have done? I replayed every hangout session over my mind. I replayed it, every detail, thinking I could have done differently. I mean, it was bad. I mean, to the point of overthinking it to the extreme. And, you know, I think that's often what we do. And so in bargaining, that's where that happens at. because we're constantly asking, what if? What if I did this? What if I did that? What if they did this? What if they did that? What if I wasn't enough? What if they had somebody else? All these different what ifs, and it's all in search of asking the question why, of trying to get an answer to, in some way, shape, or form, find closure of what we're experiencing. And this might be hard. This might be hard to hear, but I just need you to understand it. I need you to take a deep breath. Are you ready? I need you to listen, because this can be difficult. You don't need closure. You don't need to know the why. And as much and as difficult as it can be, because that person left you high and dry, left you with no answers, and you have convinced yourself for so long that if you got the answers, you would be better off. If I would have just known, if they would have just told me, I'd be okay. I'd be able to get over it. Truth is, you can actually get over it now. You can let go of it now. You actually have the capacity to move forward. Because even though you may not get an answer as to why they did it, the fact that they did it doesn't change. Whether you know why or you don't know why, the fact doesn't change. And I think oftentimes what we're really hoping is that in the long run, if they tell me why, maybe I can get it together and I can fix it. And what we end up falling into is a huge trap where we then begin to people please, and we start trying to change and make changes, not from a place of authenticity, but from a place of trying to keep somebody in our life who's slowly walking out of it. And I think in a lot of ways, we just want to be willing to not rationalize ourselves to the place where we don't acknowledge that, yes, this hurts and it sucks and it's not favorable. It's not fun. It's not something that I envisioned. It's not something that I wished for. And I can be okay with not knowing the why. I'm telling y'all, I don't say this from a place of never asking why. I was the guy that went and did it. I was the guy that went back and got the clarity call. Now, I will say in all fairness and nuance to this conversation that sometimes the maturity level is different. Okay. I was advised on one hand to not do it and on another hand to do it. And I just went ahead, even though I was never something that I got such a clear answer to where it was like, oh yeah, this is just something I just shouldn't do. I just went ahead and did it. I was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna go get that clarity call. And I've always been grateful for it, even to this day. But it wasn't that I'm grateful for it because of the very, very gracious gentleness that she actually carried in that conversation, which I've given her so much credit for. She's a great individual, great friend. I've given her so much credit for her. I've actually appreciated her time and time again for that, because it meant a lot, because I've been in situations where my name was dragged through the mud unprovoked. And it was like, yeah, that's kind of tough. And I just left the relationship at that. So I know what it's like to experience that. So for her to do that, that was really dope. She didn't have to entertain the conversation. No one is entitled to give me an answer. No one's entitled to give you an answer. And so going back for those clarity calls sometimes can be really tricky, man, because if you're not careful, you will trick yourself into saying, I'm going back for a clarity call for any other reason outside of the fact that there's a part of me that's still hoping that I could get back with this person. I'm actually still hoping that there's a chance that we can actually create something out of this. Because I'm going to be honest, y'all, I did it. Even though I told myself I just can't move forward unless I know. Truth is I was going back for that clarity call because I was really trying to listen in carefully to see if there was any sliver of hope to actually move forward with something a little bit differently with a better outcome. And if I just needed to wait a little longer. And what's so crazy is everything she said on that clarity call was the same thing she repeated in a different fashion in some way, but nonetheless the same message at the end of the year in the second rejection. I didn't listen. I missed it. I didn't listen. I wasn't attentive enough. I wasn't present enough. And all I kept doing was creating my own narrative from a response that somebody more secure than me in that moment was giving me. And I was just running with my own narratives. And so with the clarity call, here's what I'll say. if you can actually, because the call can go either way. There's a lot that can happen in it. And so if you're comfortable with saying, I can accept whatever answer it is, no matter how loving or not so loving, not so kind, not so gentle the answer is, then that's a decision that you have to make. But I really do believe that maybe perhaps the experience that I had is the exception to the rule, not the rule, because I don't know too many people who are willing to entertain a conversation like that after telling somebody they're not really that interested. I just don't. And so my encouragement to you and my encouragement to others that I've coached isn't necessarily to put yourself in a position to go get the clarity call, to go get clarity, to go figure out why. Because sometimes you don't have access to that. Person might have been blocked. They might have blocked you. No contact, whatever the situation and connection is. What I'm telling you is that there is a way you can move forward and not have to go back for an answer. Because if we're being honest enough with ourselves, oftentimes the real reason we're going back is not to get clarity, is not to learn our mistakes, is not some kind of coddled answer that we're creating in our minds to justify going back. It's actually because there's still a part of us that hopes that this can work out. And if you're honest enough to come to that conclusion, the clarity call does not need to happen. And if you ask me, I think it needs to be off the table, because we're not going back for any other reason than to see if we can still get our foot in the door. Instead of just simply accepting reality, accepting the truth, accepting the outcome for how it is and how it was presented. And we just have to really consider that, y'all. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It really is. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it is one that's necessary for us to heal. So when we come back to being honest about the grieving part, I mean, all of that is part of it. There are a couple things that Samuel does that I think is very important, that I think connects to maybe where we are in the middle. Because on one hand, Samuel is mourning over Saul, perhaps because he's still clinging on to the version of Saul that he envisioned him becoming that doesn't exist. He's still clinging on to this version of Saul that he saw a lot of potential in that just did not come to fruition. And as a result, he seems to have maybe lingered a little longer in his mourning than God maybe intended for him. That maybe God himself maybe didn't just intend for him to lay there and stay there. I mean, look at the initial question. Initial statement. You have mourned long enough, which means Samuel in some way, shape, or form has been mourning. So he's been grieving this in any kind of way. He's been grieving it, and he's been grieving it for so long that now the Lord has to step in and be like, "Hey, bro, you grieving too long. This is too much. All right, I gave you your space. I gave you the time. I let you feel what you needed to feel. But now we're clinging to something different. Now, perhaps we're clinging to some version of this individual that just simply doesn't exist and isn't being stepped into." And that might be you, because there's still a hope that something can come out of it. So you're still hoping for the best. We're still hoping that this person becomes all that we want them to be. They still got it in them. I know they can love better. I know they can do better. I know they want to do better. I know, like, we're just wishing the best, but we're ignoring the reality of what their behaviors have shown us. And so what we're doing is we're just clinging and wishing that this person just becomes what they want to be, or what we hope for them to be in our lives. And again, that comes back to us being willing to accept reality. We got to be willing to get to a place of accepting reality and what their behaviors are showing us, because that communicates just as much as words, if not better, very much better. We have to be honest about that. Call a spade, call a thing. This is how they acted. Even though this is who I wanted them to be, this is who they were, this is who they are. And based on who they are, no matter the title, allow me to make a decision on the relationship moving forward, even to the extent of distancing myself and separating from the fantasy of this individual. But then we also got to think too, and this is an interesting part as well, because I think both of them tie together. So not only is it possible that Samuel is holding on to a version of Saul that doesn't exist, but it's possible that Samuel is blaming himself for Saul not becoming the version of himself that Samuel envisioned him to be. So much potential. If you guys remember how Saul was chosen, you know, he had the stature, he had the appearance, Dude had the total package outwardly. And Samuel moving in obedience. Hey, Saul, you're about to be the next king of Israel. And then Saul fumbles the bag on numerous occasions throughout his entire kingship up to his death. I mean, he does things without consulting God. God is a last option and last choice. He just lacks a full, faithful, submissive attitude, perspective, walk, obedience to God. And God got to the point where he rejected him as king. And here we are where Samuel is just, he's down bad. Perhaps because, and this is just a thought, but perhaps because he thinks that because Saul didn't become what Samuel, envisioned him to become, the potential that Saul had written all on him, Samuel feels responsible for that. Samuel feels responsible for that. They're like, yo, dang, bro, I'm putting it all on me. I'm taking that baggage. I'm taking that weight because it was on me. I was supposed to make them better. I was supposed to make him better. I was supposed to make him the best that he could be, and he never reached that. And so I feel like that's on me. Can I just encourage you? Because maybe that's something you've said about yourself to previous friendships and relationships that have gone away. Some decisions that you've witnessed friends make, some decisions you've witnessed your significant other make that weren't good decisions, that were hurtful decisions, that impacted you in a negative way. And you started questioning to yourself, dang, man, I wish I could have done better. Dang, man, I wish I was a better example. I wish I was this. I wish I was that. Let me just tell you that the decision somebody makes has less to do with you. Stop taking credibility. Stop holding on to weight that doesn't belong to you. Stop making yourself responsible for the decisions people made on their own. And now they're sitting in consequences, or they have to deal with consequences, or they just have to deal with the fallout of such decisions. Stop that. That's not your weight to carry. That is not your weight to carry. God did not possibly allow this relationship to be in order to make you savior, because you're not savior. You were never connected to this person for the purpose of saving them, for the purpose of saving them from themselves. Only Jesus himself is the savior. None of us are. None of us are. And so you got to let go of this savior complex and this perspective that everybody who's connected to you all of a sudden is somebody that you're just supposed to make better in every way. And if they don't, it's on you. No, some people just aren't able to reach the potential that is possibly given to them and shown in them because of the unwillingness of them to be submissive to what God has given them, to what God has planted in them. That ain't got nothing to do with you. Some plant, some water, but God ultimately gives the increase. That's not on you. We have to stop taking accountability and responsibility for those things and let that go, because what it does is it puts us in this cycle of shame and regret, where we begin to believe that because somebody wasn't who we thought they could be, it's on us, right? And that's a bigger form of people pleasing, because we just don't allow people to take accountability for their own decisions. And we start shifting blame, and we start taking blame, maybe even in efforts of protecting this person. Oh, they're not a bad person. I just want to be sure that people don't see the wrong thing about them. No, no, I can't control how people respond. I can't control how people respond to me. I can't control how people respond to others I may speak on. Of course, in a respectful manner, right? It doesn't give me the permission to go crazy. It doesn't give me permission to be ballistic and disrespectful and dishonorable. But when I share the role that somebody had in my story, if they don't like it, they shouldn't have played the role they played. That's real talk. In any kind of emotional experience that you have that wounded you, right? They should not have played that role. And it is okay for us to live in truth without minimizing who we are, so that way somebody who may have hurt us doesn't get to experience some type of consequence as a result of hurting us. And whatever that consequence is, it's not something that we control. I'm just sharing my story, my experience with this individual. And what comes out of it comes out of it. And we do this, we share our story, not without being messy. without adding fuel to the fire in terms of being dishonorable and disrespectful. But sharing your story in and of itself isn't disrespectful. It's allowing other people to know where you are, how you got to where you are, and even the people who played a role in how you arrived to where you are. That's living in truth without minimizing who you are in order to get there. So I just want to encourage you, listening and thinking through 1 Samuel, that we have to be honest and say, yo, we may have checked into the Grief Hotel a little bit longer than we should have. We might have been here a little longer than we should have. And we got to be honest about our grieving process, not just so that way we can enter into it in order to heal, but so that way we aren't, lying to ourselves, convincing ourselves that we are after something when really we're after something else. And just being honest and saying, yo, I might have been in this a little too long because I've been grieving this breakup for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's really because I'm just hoping that I still get a text back. And I'm hoping that this person calls back, and I'm hoping this person turns around, and I'm hoping this person leaves whom they may be currently with to get back with me. And I'm hoping, and I'm stalking social media profiles. I'm looking at all that kind of stuff, right? Because I'm hoping in some way, shape, or form, this person comes back. And truth is that we have to accept that the fantasy of this individual that we have in our mind, we are not going to experience. And part of our grieving process is giving ourselves permission to grieve what we wanted this person to be, but we didn't get the privilege of experiencing, and allowing that to be something we let go in order to live. But then here's the next part, and I'll be quick on these last other two. Genesis 19 and Lot's wife reveals to us that we're still stuck. We're emotionally stuck. Okay. And this is important. Okay. We got to be mindful of what we're rehearsing. That's the official third part, right? We got to be mindful of what we're rehearsing. So we have to be mindful of what has our attention. We have to be present in our grief. We have to be honest in our grief and about our grief, but we also have to be mindful about what we're rehearsing. And so when you remember Genesis 19, Lot's wife, she looks back at Sodom as they're being delivered from Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is so interesting. She turns into a pillar of salt. It's not to say that obviously we're literal turning into pillar of salts when we look back, but I think the picture there is just allowing us to understand that she was emotionally stuck. Her heart was still in Sodom, even though she was moving, even though she was running out of the city, instructed not to look back. She heard the instruction. Even though she was moving, she was still stuck because she just could not let go of what she was possibly creating in Sodom, what she was doing in Sodom, but more importantly, where her heart was in Sodom. And I think that's a lot of us in this space because, again, I think seamlessly connecting to the previous point we made, we're still stuck on who we wanted this person to be, that we have yet to accept what is. And I think sometimes the hardest part about grieving is accepting what is. And I think in this particular situation, proof that we're still stuck emotionally is the very fact that we're using other people as a means of getting over what we lost. We're increasing body counts. We're sexing it out. We are numbing ourselves, dissociating from our emotions. We're possibly moving at a speed of comparison, where we're comparing everybody we're with to the previous one that broke our heart. We're constantly stalking social media pages, even though we said we blocked them. We blocked them, right? We blocked them. We don't see none of their stuff. Which leads me to that point, that part of what actually is showing that you're rehearsing it is the fact that you did block them. Now, of course, if it's a harassing type of deal where they're harassing you, I think that's different. But when you go out of your way to block somebody, I think that is a very, very emotional response, because what you're simply saying is, is that I want this person out of sight, out of mind, when in reality, they're not outside of your heart. And it's crazy how we will go the lengths to blocking people, but yet we'll still stalk them on social media. And we'll still stalk who they're posting and who they're dating. And we got all the new tea and the information on where they are in life. But we'll tell people every day, all day, oh, I moved on, I let it go. Right? You went and got in a new relationship, and the new relationship that you got in wasn't because you actually saw value in the relationship and in the person you're connected to. It's because you wanted to go back to the person that broke up with you to show them you're over them. Same with your body count. Like you raised your body count because this is how I wanted to grieve through the relationship, the breakup. And you've left a trail of brokenness on your way in and on your way out. And so I just think there are so many ways that we find ourselves emotionally stuck. Emotionally stuck. You are constantly rehearsing what happened, rehearsing why that person wasn't there. You're constantly trying to plug in and create your own answer. You're constantly trying to plug in your own why. You're constantly in a place of stagnance. Constantly in a place where you're unable to move. You can't see yourself moving. And so you're constantly looking back, wishing things were different, wishing things were changed. How could they? Why would they? Bargaining again. And we're emotionally in a place that is keeping us in bondage. But here's the kicker. Outwardly, you look like you're moving. You got a routine down. You going to the gym. You got your content moving. You got a new relationship and a new boo. Money is going great. Status is going great. Every time somebody asks you how you doing, your first response is, you too blessed to be stressed. You blessed and highly favored. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy because we have so many different cliches and quick responses that we give to people as a means of not showing where we really are. And if you were to actually answer that question in truth, you would be honest and be like, yo, no, I'm still struggling. I still have yet to really let go of who I hope this person would be in my life. We dated for 4 or 5 years. We dated for 6, 7 years. And it feels like all years of those were wasted. And I thought I grieved it because I don't have any more tears to cry. But if I'm being honest, I still think about what we could have been. It's hard for me to let go of all. I feel like if I let go of that person, I'm letting go of all the history we had together. I feel like I'm letting go of all the memories we made together. I'm thinking about like the fact that I might be letting go of all of the growth that we had together. And truth is, man, is that a part of processing the grief, a part of letting go, a part of moving forward is being willing to just simply accept what is not. And just because we have a history together does not entitle somebody to be in the next phases and chapters of my life. Relationships operate in seasons, y'all. And even though that ending was unexpected, it is a season that has now shown its expiration date. And instead of trying to reopen the jug of milk that has been expired for 5 days to do a smell test to show or give a reassurance that it's really expired, perhaps we just look at what the relationship is currently, who this person is today, how this relationship has compacted and impacted up to this point. If we actually look at those things and we see the behavior of this individual, we see the trend of this relationship, we compare it to our values, we know what we're looking for, we know who we need, we know what we need, we know when we need it. We're learning more and more of those things, and we just look at that relationship and say, man, that's just not what it is anymore. Then be willing to go ahead and let it go and let the behaviors of that individual dictate whether or not it's time to let go. Instead of needing to always come back and send them a text and do another sniff test to determine and be reassured that it's over. I'm just texting him. I'm just sending him a message. Nah, fam. Nah, you're really actually trying to regurgitate, revive something that God himself has put away and has buried. God told you to leave. Now God has made it unbelievably visible to you to leave, and yet you're still finding a way to go back, and yet you're praying that God brings you through. How contradictory is that? That we will pray to God to bring us out of something only for us to either go back or continue to hold on to fantasies that don't match the prayers we're praying for. I think a beautiful thing about Lot's wife is that all of us in some way, shape, or form have played that role and have been in that position. And what we have to do is be willing to trust the unchanging hand of God and be willing to lean into where he's taking us. So that way we don't find ourselves emotionally stuck in a loop that keeps us from living the life we're called to live. You've looked back for long enough. I just want to say that you've looked back long enough. You've rehearsed it long enough. They're not coming back. Much like when Moses died. When Moses died at the beginning of Joshua chapter 1, remember what God told Joshua? Moses is dead. That's a tough one. Moses was dead. And they all had a period of grieving, just like you've got a period of grieving. But if we're being honest, there's some moments, some people we've been grieving over far too long. Far too long. Far too long. And I think it's time to move forward. And even though grieving can be a process, again, I'm not one to tell you how long to grieve or how you should grieve, but I can tell you you're not designed to grieve for the rest of your life. Some of us need to just be willing to move on, grieve, to mourn and move. Just mourn and move, right? Cry your tears, but Lord, thank you for another day. And here are the values that I'm looking to align my life with moving forward. Mourn and move. And some of us need that, man. Some of us need that. We're so busy looking back that we're missing what God has in front of us. We could never fully appreciate it. We could never lean into it. And it's because our heart is filled with so much blockage and so much pain from what was caused in previous relationships and experiences. And we just have yet to really let go. And letting go is God's invitation for us to live. He's not trying to rob us of it. He's not trying to keep us from it. He's inviting us to live. He's inviting us to exchange the vision we had for our lives for his vision for our lives in letting go. Because a lot of us don't envision the idea of letting go of somebody who hurt us. Nah, we're going to make them pay. We're going to give that vengeance. We're going to get it back. We're going to get it back in blood. Ain't that what we talk about? Nah, that's not how God operates, though. So if we're really going to serve God and really live for him, are we going to allow him to define how we ought to operate and how we are we going to move, or we're just trying to force him into our motives and our directions? And I think if we're doing the latter, we're missing God entirely. And if we do the former, it doesn't mean that we're missing out on life. It's just that we're finding a way to process through life with new meaning, new direction, with the opportunity to actually transform for the better and not grow bitter. So be mindful of what you're rehearsing. Be mindful of what you're rehearsing. Are you constantly going back and looking at those messages? Are you constantly finding yourself going back when the photo album shows on this day and it was a photo of you and your ex, you and your past friend? Are you constantly finding yourself over on their social media pages trying to figure out who they're dating now, who they're posting now? Maybe trying to find some updates so that way if they are dating somebody, you can compare who you are to who they are, who they appear to be. So you can find some more solace in the fact that that's no longer who you're with. That they chose a 6, I'm a 10. What are you rehearsing? What are you allowing yourself to repetitively stay in a loop about? Because I think that stuff just says volumes. And it reveals that we're still emotionally stuck, even though we might be appearing as if we're moving forward. And a part of being able to move forward completely and not be emotionally stuck, not allow our hearts to still be entangled, is by accepting what is and trusting God that what he's asking of us to leave behind is less than where he's taking us to. And then what he has for us is for us. And trusting that process and trusting him in that space. So lastly, okay, we've talked about being mindful of what has your attention. We've talked about being honest in your grief. We've talked about being mindful of what you're rehearsing. The final thing is grieving with God. It is important that you do this process with God. Isaiah 40 is the passage of scripture that I would refer to, and Isaiah 40 is a beautiful passage, and I just kind of want to read a little bit of it. because I think it just really helps us kind of digest what this is. And of course, in context up to this point, in the book of Isaiah in and of itself, Israel has been just a mess. Okay. Israel has been a mess. Israel has put themselves in position to where they've been exiled, and their disobedience is what's pushing God to allow them to be taken in captivity. That is for the means of them being restored. And what is so good about this entire chapter of scripture is how Isaiah centers the people, his audience, back to who God is, despite the horrible conditions and experiences they're undergoing. And sometimes that's what we need, is just a good refresher of who God is, so we can start telling our problems about God instead of allowing our problems to become bigger than our God. And I want you to catch this, just a few verses here, and I encourage you to read this in your own time. Isaiah 40 verse 1, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. So I just want you to catch that God is speaking tenderly. God's voice is so gentle and merciful with us that he makes room for our tears. He makes room for our frustrations. He makes room for the process of grieving. He makes room for the questions and doubts. And yet he speaks so tenderly and gentle to us to help us nurture these wounds. Tell her that her sad days are gone and her sins are pardoned. Yes, the Lord has punished her twice over for all her sins. Listen. So we have to listen. We have to give our ear to who God is and what he's saying. Listen, it's the voice of someone shouting. Clear the way through the wilderness for the Lord. Make a straight highway through the wasteland for our God. Fill in the valleys and level the mountains and hills. Straighten the curves and smooth out the rough places. Then the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together. The Lord has spoken. And then I want you to catch this out. Shout that people are like the grass. Their beauty fades as quickly as the flowers in the field. So now we're putting perspective on who people are. We're putting perspective on the strength that people actually carry. People are like grass. Grass withers. Grass is so small, so weak. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. That ought to be something that just allows you to bring peace to your body, peace and regulation to you, in the simple fact that grass withers and flower fades. People come and people go. People come and people go. Experiences come and go. But the word of our God stands forever. Man, that's something that's amazing. The fact that we can just simply depend on God's word. We can just simply find solace in the fact that God's word doesn't change. And that we're able to find rest in him, and resting in his sovereignty, resting in his peace, resting in his comfort, resting in his promises that he's given us. And that no matter who leaves us, it doesn't disqualify us from experiencing our Father in the right lens, in the right ways, with the right heart. Yes, the sovereign Lord, this is verse 10. Yes, the sovereign Lord is coming in power. He will rule with a powerful arm. See, he brings his reward with him as he comes. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will carry the lambs in his arms, holding them close to his heart. He will gently lead the mother sheep with their young. I want you to pay attention to the next few verses, and then I'm done, because I just want you guys to listen to this whole verse, whole chapter. Listen to this. Who else has held the oceans in his hand? Who has measured off the heavens with his fingers? Who else knows the weight of the earth, or has weighed the mountains and hills on a scale? Who is able to advise the Spirit of the Lord? Who knows enough to give him advice or teach him? Has the Lord ever needed anyone's advice? Did he need instruction about what is good? Did someone teach him what is right or show him the path of justice? No. For all the nations of the world are but a drop in the bucket. They are nothing more than dust on the scales. He picks up the whole earth as though it were a grain of sand. All the wood in Lebanon's forests and all Lebanon's animals will not be enough to make a burnt offering worthy of our God. To whom can you compare? Verse 18. What image can you find to resemble him? Can he be compared to an idol formed in the mold, overlaid with gold and decorated with silver chains? Or if people are too poor for that, they might at least choose wood and won't decay, and a skilled craftsman to carve an image that won't fall down. Haven't you heard? Don't you understand? Are you deaf to the words of God, the words he gave before the world began? Are you so ignorant? God sits above the circle of the earth. The people below seem like grasshoppers to him. He spreads out the heavens like a curtain and makes his tent from them. He judges the great people of the world and brings them all to nothing. Oh, my Lord. The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of all the earth. He never grows weak or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding. He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. Even youths will become weak and tired, and young men will fall in exhaustion. And then we get our infamous verse from Isaiah 40. They that wait on the Lord will renew their strength, mount up on wings like eagles, run, not get weary, walk, not faint. Like, I just want y'all to be mindful as you're reading through Isaiah 40 that God is simply recentering our focus back to him. He's greater, he's stronger, he's bigger, and there's no problem, no pain, no emotional wound, no darkness that God cannot speak to, that God cannot speak to us while we're in order to bring us out. And there's not a problem that's bigger than what God can handle. And so I just want you to be mindful that as you grieve and as you actually journey through this space authentically, that you lean into what God has to say. A lot of us are struggling. A lot of us don't know how to navigate this shift properly, not only because we don't understand that everything's pulling for our attention and we have to be mindful of what we give our attention to, not only because we aren't honest about our grief, not only because we have to be mindful of what we're rehearsing, but also because, truth be told, we're not doing it with God. We're going to red pill. We're going to all these different substances that we think is going to help us and solve the issue. And I get it, because deep down, man, we're seeking something that will ease the pain, that will ease the gut punch feeling, that will ease the understanding that we were rejected, that will ease the process of us not being wanted by somebody we wanted so badly. I get it. It's real and it hurts. But I really want you to understand that your healing only comes at its greatest form when you're connected to the healer. We can connect to anybody out of trauma. We can connect to anybody out of the emotional wounds we've experienced because there's relatability. Gosh, finally, somebody who gets it. I don't have to explain it all the time because they get it. They've been through it. For sure. For sure. And if you're not healing in that space, what are you doing? There's only so much relatability you're going to get out of the music you're listening to that's really placing a comfortable pillow around your feelings. There's only so much that you're going to be able to get out of that. And the last thing I ever want you to do is miss out on your healing because you're unwilling to address the hard things, because you're unwilling to do the hard things. You're looking at a guy who did the hard things. You're looking at a guy who had to be honest and say, yo, I saw things and I was giving myself permission to things that God wasn't. I was the guy that had to be honest and say, yo, I was so caught up in my own narrative and my own agenda that I failed to be present and fully aware and cognizant of what this individual in front of me needed at the time. That possibly, if I was more willing to be present, I could have offered and not actually use as a bargaining chip. I couldn't be a friend. I couldn't be legitimately available, holistically available. I was too concerned about what the purpose of the connection was. I was too concerned about how and what things were going to look like if we got romantically connected. I couldn't see past my own desires so bad. Man, I missed it. I missed the fact. I missed it. Just all of it. Just all of it. All of it. To be a friend, to be a brother, to be available, to be loving, to continue showing the heart of Christ to somebody who was still in their own lane of life in any kind of way. I was so caught up in creating the narratives. I was so caught up in the selfishness, making it all about me, making it all about how I felt. Missed it. And I just don't want that to happen to you. And I think a lot of times these rejections, these heartbreaks, they lead us down a path where we're just so willing to do the extreme and throw everything away, as if being a good man is dependent on the outcome and rewards that we get. And last time I checked, reading through my Bible, that's not even there. You ain't ever going to find somebody who is like, I'm a good man based on the outcomes that God gives me. I'm going to do what's right as long as doing what's right benefits me. No. Christ calls us to pick up our cross daily, not when we feel like it, not when only things go right. Hey, I'm only willing to die for you, Jesus, as long as I get something in the pot. Nah. Don't even make sense. And that's not even aligned in who God is. Rather, we do what's right because it's the right thing to do. We reflect the heart of Christ because it's what we're called to do. We're called to live a life of love that reflects his heart and not give people so much permission over our feelings, over our emotions, over our temperature as a human being that when they're no longer present, they get to dictate how we move and how we operate towards others. I don't know about you, but I refuse to live that life. I refuse to go down the lane and the drive where I only put bandages over my wound instead of actually having surgical repair over my wound. And surgery is what God invites us to, so that way our hearts and minds are reconnected to his purpose and kingdom so we can live forward. And how he does this is reshaping our thinking from the pains we're experiencing to start asking, what's the purpose behind this pain? What is this pain teaching me? What is this pain revealing to me? What is this pain pushing me towards? What is this pain building in me that's actually beneficial for me reflecting the heart of Christ moving forward? What's the fruit that's available to gain? Because I promise you something good is going to come out of this if you're willing to be patient and present with where God has you and going at his pace and the healing he has for you. But it's all about us at the end of the day making a decision. The crucial shift is all about making a decision. You had an experience that was hurtful. We've went through it. We've unpacked it. We have to make a decision. And my prayer for you is that you choose to do life with God. My prayer is that you still remain close to Christ. My prayer is that even in the heartbreak, you don't let go of God's hand because he's not letting go of yours. My prayer is that you allow yourself to feel what you feel in the processes of grieving and still do life the way God designs it, the way God desires you to, reflecting his heart and moving in a life of obedience. Don't let what somebody failed to give you keep you from being who you're called to be. Don't let the love that people failed to give you that was a reflection of our Heavenly Father keep you and rob you from experiencing our Heavenly Father. Don't allow people so much power over your life that they get to control your life and not even be in it. Don't give people the pleasure. Don't give other people the irrational desire to be chased if they are slowly choosing to walk out of your life. Honor their decision. That's what love is, y'all. I wish I could tell you love was clinging on to everything and love was all centered on us and it was a black hole. I wish I could tell you. I wish it. But truth is, it's not. I know what it's like to be on the other end of a breakup, of a separation, a friendship breakup, anything like that. And you just want to so desperately cling on to this person for your life. But genuine love is allowing them to walk out. And allowing that boundary to be set. And in the process, being able to heal properly so you can live beyond the pain incurred to your life. Because there's so much more. There's so much more to live. There's so much more to experience. There's so much more that God has in store. And if that one left, and if they left, I promise you, someone down the line is on the way. If you just trust God, if you just trust what God has for you, allow yourself to be connected to him in this space of singleness as you get reconnected to him and his purposes for your life. And allow his tender words of truth and love to speak to your heart in this season, so that you may gain new profound perspectives and being able to navigate what's in the middle, being able to navigate a challenging season like this so you can actually live forward and not be stuck in the past, not be stuck on what was, not be stuck on what you wish you could have been or what you wish could have been had, but being able to live in his presence. presence, being able to live in truth, being able to live in acceptance, and not be bothered when that person shows back up, not be bothered if that person sent you a message, not be bothered if you saw them on your feed, but being honest enough to deal with all those emotions. So that way you are able to keep the peace that God gave to you. A lot of times our peace is disturbed because we put our peace in the hands of other people. As long as my girlfriend's here, I'm at peace. As long as my boyfriend's here, I'm at peace. As long as my bank account's here, I'm at peace. And we've put our peace in the hands of people instead of putting it in the hands of God. And that's how we become so dysregulated, so broken down, and feeling like we can't live forward. And truth is, the peace that God gave to you was for you. It wasn't for them. It wasn't for them to carry. It wasn't for you to put it in their hands. His peace he gave to you. And so I want you to use this video and this entire conversation as permission to receive the peace God gave you and rest in that. You're going to cry your tears. You're going to grieve. You're going to feel your emotions for the first time. You're going to be on a roller coaster. Some days are going to be up. Some days are going to be down. Some days are going to be smiles, and some days you'll have a frown. Absolutely. It's a part of the process because you're learning for the first time what it's like to actually be present in your body as you're feeling emotions that aren't favorable and hurt. But invitation to healing and holistic healing, we have to endure pain in order to get it. It can't come any other way. And we have to face it in order to actually get through it. And you've ran long enough. And it's time to really get back on track, get your life back by addressing what hurts so you can live forward. Okay? Such a great conversation. I'm so excited, so glad that you guys were able to listen in to all of this. I'm so appreciative. And listen, if you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, definitely be sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with a friend, man. Share this podcast episode, share clips that will be coming in the future from this episode that you find so helpful, so beneficial, and understanding better where you are and how to navigate this crucial shift that always ends in us having to make a decision and standing with the decision we made. In truth, more so than feelings. And I'm just so excited to continue having these conversations with you guys, connecting with you guys, and learning how to do relationships the right way, biblically, with God, with ourselves, and with others. All right? I gotta go. I don't got nothing else. I just want this to sit. I want this to resonate with you. And I'm excited to catch up with you guys in the future videos and more cinematic films that are on the way as we continue to prepare for future conversations. All right. I can't wait to see you then. Until then, be easy and be breezy, my friend. Peace.